I used to genuinely think they were evil. I didn't really know anything about them until I started religiously watching E3 presentations back in the day. Back when E3 was still kicking around, all the big companies showed up every single time. And for a few days each summer, I could plunk myself down on the couch and watch presentations morning and night. Great, I miss those days. And this was when I discovered Ubisoft, in a sense. I knew about them mainly from Rayman and the launch titles they made for the Wii. As I was one of those poor folks duped into buying Red Steel. We really feel like
It's nearly time for afternoon tea.
you are in the game. But I didn't know much about them as a company. I wasn't familiar with all their different series. But after watching one of their E3 presentations, I thought, you know what? This Ubisoft ain't so bad. I really appreciated how they seemed to be interested in creating a wide range of experiences. They had their AAA series, which seemed really impressive even when I didn't play the games, it was still fun to watch the reveals and marvel at the graphics and whatnot. I did play Assassin's Creed Black Flag and loved the heck out of it, though we'll be talking about that more in a bit. But then in addition to the AAA stuff, Ubisoft had smaller projects, platformers like the Rayman games, indie-sized artful little gems like Child of Light and Valiant Hearts, and their E3 presentations were cringy, sure, but all E3 presentations were cringy. That was the whole point. And at the very least, you could say these ones were colorful and interesting. I knew Ubisoft was a huge gaming corporation, but it felt at least a little bit like these were some people who liked making games. They worked on so many different projects that I even got a little excited wondering what they'd make for next. For a few years, I genuinely looked forward to watching their show, E3, and even as recently as the beginning of the Switch generation, Ubisoft was put on good shows. Cool games. They did Mario and Rabbids, which was awesome, and no one else liked Scarlet. I will forever stand by that game. I thought it was neat. I even did sponsorships for those games. Ubisoft let me make some silly skits. We were all chummy with each other. It was great. What a wow. Just amazing how dramatically the older you get, the more you find that you can never count on something. It's sad, but it's true. Many things, no matter how good they are, have a tendency to just go bad. In my opinion, Ubisoft could not possibly be lower. Like even if they tried to get me into some ridiculous scenario, they deliberately sabotaged my opinion. The end result would still be basically more or less what we are. Respect I had for them, 100%. Admiration and faith I had in them as developers, all of it completely gone. That well has run bone dry. Now, that's not to say the company is incapable. They just put out a really cool-looking Prince of Persia Metroidvania things, and I hear it's amazing. Then Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope looks like a really cool sequel. Ubisoft is a huge company. They've got plenty of passionate and talented developers on the payroll. And in the increasingly rare occasions those devs are allowed to, they are very much capable of making great stuff. They are not. Name the crew, it's the captain who's running the ship. For starters, there's the whole employee abuse thing. I won't go too deep into that, I already know the whole. But just to sum it up, all that time Ubisoft was making cool games and doing silly dance numbers on stage, they were also cultivating a toxic and abusive work environment where the top executives were allowed to harass anyone they pleased. And even since all that came to light, they have done essentially nothing to fix the problem. So that's already plenty reason to just be entirely done with Ubisoft as a company. It is run by very, very evil people. And I'm not a fan of evil people. Not my thing. But even beyond that, Ubisoft has consistently revealed itself to be just another AAA publisher. Over the last 10 years or so, the industry has gotten nastier and nastier. More focus-tested, trend-chasing schlock, more aggressive and psychologically manipulative monetization, more bare-bones, yet fully priced experiences propped up by paid post-launch content, etc., etc. Not every company has gone that. Plenty have decided to hold their ground, keep doing their own thing, not sink so low. But one company that's been leading the charge, flying a green flag with a golden dollar sign on it, Ubisoft. Good old Ubisoft. In this increasingly scummy gaming landscape, they have happily embraced the scumminess. They have slathered themselves in it, made it their home. When live service games became the big moneymakers, Ubisoft basically said, all we make now is live service games. Everything else is worthless. When microtransactions became commonplace, they were eagerly adapted. Ubisoft. And multiplayer games, that's one. It's easier to monetize a multiplayer game, especially if it's free to play. But what about single-player games? Oh, but not just single-player games. Full
Have a question for me, cutie?
Assassin's
Well,
Creed
if there's
sold
anything else...
very, very well. When they started releasing them every single year, there started to be a problem, and they had to pull in the reins a bit, but for the most part, it is an incredibly profitable series. Not profitable enough, though, it seems. Ubisoft introduced RPG elements to the series. Not because this was a natural evolution of the formula, but so they could sell players XP multipliers. I'm not making this up, and frankly, to this day, I am appalled that this happened, and it just kind of happened, and it's just sitting there having it happened, and we all just kind of have to deal with it. They introduced XP into their games exclusively so they could drip feed XP to the player in order to frustrate them into purchasing multipliers. It's unfathomable. It's disgusting on such a deep, deep level. It is an insult to the customer, and at the risk of sounding all hoity-toity, the arts of it. If you are doing this, like if this is how you're monetizing your games, you are clearly, so crystal clear transparently, only exclusively in it for the money. You clearly do not have even one shred of care or even humanity for your audience. Just like none. That's it. You're the scammer, they're the mark. That's literally all this is. So yeah, I think Ubisoft is pretty awful. We're establishing that pretty firmly right now. But you know what? I do have to admire one of their qualities. It is their unshakable reserve. Their passionate dedication in all that trend chasing, that pledge to focus almost entirely on live service games. Yeah, it's not working out for them. That's the thing about live service multiplayer games. If they work, then they make you a lot of money. If they don't, if they just don't click with players, then you've got yourself an extremely expensive flop on your hands. These kinds of games take so much money, so much infrastructure. They've got to support millions of players. They've got to have content planned years in advance. They've got to run well. They've got to be polished. They've got to really stand out from the vast ocean of similar games, all vying for the market's attention. But there can only be so many popular multiplayer games at any given time. And Ubisoft just keeps making games that people don't care about. Their live service games are failing, or otherwise just not performing as well as they want. Their multiplayer series that used to be successful are morphing to fit the live service model, and people aren't having it. One would think that someone in charge might look at all this and realize, hey, this whole live service thing isn't really working out. I think this might have been one of those bandwagon things people are always talking about, a foolish attempt to capitalize on what's already successful by chasing trends and creating soulless, focus-tested slop for the masses. Maybe we should take a moment to read things. Yeah, you'd expect that from a reasonable person. But the dudes in Ubisoft's captain's cabin gathered around the table with all the maps and stuff on it. As recently as last year, CEO Yves Schwimo was like, we love live service games. Live service games are life. I mean, just can't keep this guy down. What a little fighter. Then on the single-player front, they essentially built an empire on making games. using the exact same formula again and again and again. Assassin's Creed and Far Cry, for a while it felt like they were essentially the same games, but with different stories and camera perspectives. Gameplay loops were just so similar. Today they've diverged a fair amount, but Ubisoft has put out so many games from each series, and pumping out games like mad, that used to work for Ubisoft, so they kept doing it. And particularly in the case of Far Cry, people are caring less and less. Reception to a lot of these games is growing more and more tepid. So, what should Ubisoft do? Change course? No, not on your life. How about we just make sure that all these games ship with more microtransactions, more XP multipliers and premium currencies and special items you can only get by spending even more than the $60 or now $70 you already spent. It seems like no matter what happens, no matter how much they fail, they refuse to learn. Shmumo himself has even admitted
Why can't I use these?
yeah, they're turning out some real stinkers, and they need to do better. He says that,
There we go.
but says and that's it. Nothing changes. They keep making stinkers. Which finally brings us to the analogy this video was made on. And the reason I am really sad I don't have my
I should make a new strength
last
potion.
Ubisoft video, I had this thing where I'm looking, there's a bridge, at this time I could be here, it could be a ship, sinking, it could be awesome, but oh
Can
well.
you make more than one? Alright.
Ubisoft takes. Now, that's not to say that they're at risk of being entirely sunk 100% anytime soon. It's hard to sink a ship this big. Despite all the failures, they're still making some money. Reception to many games may be tepid, but these AAA games do appeal to very wide audiences, so sales are often open. And all the microtransactions, I'm sure those help. They're there for a reason, and I have no doubt that there are plenty of people out there who succumb to the call of those fancy, shiny currency items and such. And sometimes, Ubisoft will put out a genuine hit. Assassin's Creed Valhalla was a big financial success.
Some of them
The
take
first
multiple
in the series
titles.
hit $1 billion in revenue. Thanks in no small part, I'm sure, to the abundance of DLC and microtransactions sold alongside it. And, of course, big companies always have tricks up their sleeves. Firing employees and making the remaining ones work harder, that's a popular one. Putting more microtransactions in their games, thinking of even more sinister ways to manipulate people into spending more money. That's always on the top. They've got options, and they've got control of some really big IPs. They're going to keep making them. But I can't help but see a trend. No, I can't help but see a trajectory. More and more of their games are failing or performing well under expectations, and they're barely managing to put out just enough successful titles to lights up. The live service model isn't working, so they're leaning into it even harder. What that makes me think of... Sure, maybe the ship won't be completely submerged anytime soon, but the lower decks are flooded, and that water line is creeping upwards slowly but surely. The crew is working hard to bail out as much water as they can, and it's working! But how long will that last? This all happened because the captain sailed the ship into treacherous waters in search of treasure. But even though it's becoming more and more clear that there is just not any treasure around here, he's only sailing deeper in. Ubisoft is getting by, but their success feels tenuous. It feels unsustainable. They're doing the wrong thing and failing because of it, and only doubling and tripling and quadrupling down. Their games are selling okay, but public opinion of the company is probably at an all-time low. And on top of all that, their horrible management is catching up with them, and they're facing all sorts of lawyers and judges and regulators. It feels like every week they're getting in trouble for something. Even though they're still making money, the business is still working, technically. I get the feeling that I am not the only person who feels the ship is taking on water. Let's take a look at their stock prices. When they were at the top of their game, pumping out titles
What do
like
they mean,
Mad,
stackable?
milking that Ubisoft formula for an audience that wasn't quite sick of it yet, their stock price was very high, peaking in 2018. Then they saw a dip, but in 2020, when everyone was at home playing games and pretty much every game company was doing very well, they saw another huge increase, helped a bunch by the release of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Since then, sinking. Their stock value has dropped by a whopping 75%. The company is worth a mere quarter of what it was, and is worth only about as much as it was way back in 2015, when they were just starting to really get somewhere. These numbers are dismal. Here's the thing about an entertainment company. Its success hinges on putting out products that people buy. You never quite know what's going to happen next, or how well any one product will do. This Ubisoft ship? There's still time for it to correct. You can't just look at what happened in the past. We've got to look to the future. We've got to look ahead. So what's on the horizon for the SS Ubisoft? There's its next port of call. Oh, I've been following this for so long. I've mentioned it here and there in videos, but I have been dreaming of the day I can be able to talk about it. And I cannot even believe how perfectly this plays into the analogy. I mean, it created the analogy. Ubisoft, they're making my job so easy. They just gave this to me. Just handed it to me in a neat little package all tied up in a bow. A YouTuber could not possibly ask for it. This is too perfect. Sorry to rewind again, but remember how I mentioned Assassin's Creed Black Flag? Golly, that fun! I really love ships and the Age of Sail and all that, so I got the game looking for a good pirate simulator, expecting to mostly ignore all the assassin stuff. But it turned out that the assassin stuff only enhances the pirate stuff, and the whole package isn't just a terrific pirate simulator. It's just a phenomenal game overall. Every kind of piratey activity, you can naval combat with other ships, disabling and boarding them.
Hello.
Hey, what's up?
That's the mommies, as story you called them.
It's been a while.
Whoa, Beto and Eula! Wait, you two know each other?
Well, we haven't known each other long, but we hit it off right away. I met Captain Beto at Dornman Port. She was here in Mondstadt to buy some supplies.
Wow. Eula taking the initiative and making...
Given that the two of us just met, I wouldn't go so far. Huh? Oh, I thought we were getting along pretty well. Oh, no, I didn't mean it like that. I just thought that after my blunder earlier, you probably wouldn't... Come on, it was just a little misunderstanding, that's all. You're still...
Misunderstanding?
Well, a few days ago, after docking at Dornman Port, I thought I'd treat the crew... While we were there, an argument broke out between a couple of drunk guys. Things looked like they were... I tried talking to them, but they were in the mood for a fight, and my words fell on deaf ears. Eula was patrolling the area while all this was going down, and when she walked in... I should probably take it from here. Recently, we've intercepted a string of attempts to smuggle goods through Dornman Port, so we decided to step up our patrols in the area. On my rounds that day, I noticed a group of people I'd never seen before. Captain Beto said she didn't have the entry permit on her person and told me to check with the port authorities myself. Hey, you were just doing your duty. It was my fault, really. I should have watched my tone, but I'd had a few... I felt bad, though, so I told her once we got to talking, we really hit it off. Captain Beto mentioned that she wanted to have a look around the city the next day. I meant to say earlier. Drop the captain and... Oh, yes, of course. Pardon. Oh, that's right. Plus, I'm curious to see what the deal is with these Mondstadt potions. Could do. Although, I don't have any health issue. Let me think. Are you having trouble sleeping, Beto? No, not me. The minute my head hits the pillow, it's just that, I have this friend. She doesn't lack for anything.
Wait, this friend you're talking about...
Yep. She's no stranger to rare and precious treasures, but...
All right, we'll get started on that order for you right...
Great. Thanks for the help.
Ningguang?
What about you, Eula?
I don't want to put two... Beto came all this way. Any potion requests I have on my end, I'll just submit to Lisa later.
Aw, you're so considerate.
Oh, you think so?
but I still have a lot to learn. The next time things get heated, I should approach the situation.
Exactly! Compared to when we first, it's just like Tone Deaf Bard once said.
Thanks, you two. You're...
How's the potion making going? Hope you didn't run into too much trouble. Take all the time.
Huh. Oh, no, wait, hold on.
Ships to add them to your fleet, managing that fleet to make money, fishing, diving for buried loot, attacking strongholds, raiding storehouses, getting in swashbuckling fights with all sorts of folks. The world is massive and completely seamless, so you can sail wherever you want, and at any time you can just jump off your ship, swim to an island, and explore it for ruins and treasure, rare animal pelts, and silly Ubisoft collectibles that are completely pointless, but when you're really invested in the game, Black Flag is incredible, and I actually put it on my list of the best games of the decade. After I finished it and played it for who even knows how many hours, I wanted more. Now, it is worth noting that Ubisoft did create a straightforward follow-up to Black Flag, Assassin's Creed Rogue, but they gave it to a studio who had never made an Assassin's Creed game before. Threw the game together in well under a single year. Didn't market it. I honestly did not know about its existence until years after the fact. I'm not even kidding. And they only made it in the first place because they wanted to put Unity on 8th gen consoles only, so they needed something for people still playing their PS3s and Xbox 360s. And despite all that, the game still turned out pretty okay, and while they haven't revealed solid numbers, we know it's still sold decently based on what they've said about it. That was all Ubisoft could muster when it came to an actual follow-up to Black Flag. A comedically rushed sequel scraped together purely to help fill the holiday slot during one transitional year, then quickly forgotten. Oh, they left their eyes on a greater prize. Because, a lot of people seem to be really into this whole pirate thing. I wasn't the only one who liked Black Flag. The game was so successful that some got it in their heads that they have some. Maybe, just maybe, there's a market for a full-on pirate game without the Assassin's Creed stuff. And everyone on planet Earth was like, yes, that is such an amazing idea, please do that. The funny thing is, though, that was such a good idea on Ubisoft's part, yet that, right there, that exact point, right at the very conception of their new pirate IP, was
Oh, here it is, relaxing.
a very good idea. Because what was starting to take off around that time? The live service model. So instead of doing what literally everyone wanted, making a game like Black Flag, except with its own world and even more pirate stuff, they decided to make a primarily multiplayer, always online, live service. Actually, they decided to give the game even less pirate stuff than Black Flag, making the focus almost entirely on naval combat, without any of the actual sword fighting or island exploration or anything. Just boats shooting at each other. That's it. And at E3 2017, Ubisoft revealed Skull and Bones. I was there, on my couch. I remember that show quite well. That trailer filled me pure joy. It appeared as though we were getting that full pirate game after all. It was a dream come true, and it even had a sea monster in it, suggesting a much more fantastical, fictional world, which was everything I could have wanted. But then I read about the game after the show. Oh no, this wasn't what I wanted. This wasn't what I wanted at all. And judging by the reaction, it wasn't what anyone wanted. I couldn't find a single person who was happy about this direction the game was taking. This was, quite simply, an objectively bad idea. I mean, I could see the rationale behind this, Sinjin. Let's take a game that was good, turn it multiplayer, and get people hooked on microtransactions, battle passes, and all that junk. I mean, a semi-realistic online ship battling game? That was at least very good. The money-making potential was there, I suppose. But do you know how many people bought Black Flag? I looked it up when I was researching this video, and I found articles
Today's
saying
no
it
good for
sold
going out.
11 million units, which was the last concrete number I could find, so I'm going to go with that. But then while editing this video, Kane noticed that those articles were in 2014, only 1 year after the game.
Did I say that
Lucky I
yesterday
had
as
been
well?
checking my work, because then he found this tweet.
How's the potion making going?
4 billion people have played Black Flag. The game has been pretty steeply discounted here and there, I'm sure, and I think Ubisoft has probably had a few play days for their Assassin's Creed titles. But that number is still absurd. Even 11 million is absurd. But 34 million? Clearly, when it came to making another bigger pirate game, the money was already on the team. They already had the make.
Perfect. Looks like my gift is all set.
Is it time for your return journey then? If you're heading back to Dornman...
Yeah, I think I've gotten my fill of sightseeing, so it's probably time I... Traveler, Paimon, I'll see you some other time.
But what do we
On
always
behalf of
say
the
about
reconnaissance company,
They don't want a lot of money. They want all. They didn't want another successful game. They
A gift for her
wanted
girlfriend.
and generated an endless supply of cash from it. Players. That was all they would accept. So, to throw in even more ridiculous metaphors, they took their big, delicious piece of cake and threw it in the trash. For they would settle for nothing less than the whole darn. So when people complained about how Skull and Bones looked, what did those lion-hearted heroes at Ubisoft do? Did they listen? Did they realize that something wasn't right? No, they stayed the course. And what followed was a long, drawn-out, and even nightmarish development process. An arduous voyage to the northern gentlemen. E3s came and went, and no new trailers dropped. After a while, no one knew where they were. But Ubisoft said it was still coming, but something not right. And the reports started coming in. The game had been scrapped and restarted multiple times. People who playtested it said it wasn't any fun. The whole project was turning out to be a flaming wreck. It got delayed. Then delayed again, and again. Honestly, I don't know if anyone knows exactly how many times it was delayed. I think you'd need a chronometer and a sextant to figure. How many times was Skull and Bones delayed? I don't know. What phase is the moon in, and what direction is the wind going? Just for starters. So many people wondered why Ubisoft didn't just cancel the darn. But then it came out that the game was funded by the Singaporean government, and Ubisoft was contractually obligated to finish it and produce a new IP using Singaporean talent. So no matter how rough those waters were, no matter how doomed the expedition seemed, they absolutely had to keep going. This game has been in development now for over 10 years. 7 years have passed since its reveal. I can't fathom how much money they must have spent on it. I mean, I truly cannot imagine. Oh, but this is where the story really pays off. When they revealed Skull and Bones, we all said that the idea of a game like Black Flag, except only the naval combat and none of the other stuff, was a flat-out stupid idea. And over these 7 years, they have rebooted and retooled the game more times than we even know. People have told them their game wasn't fun, so they've just kept working at it, trying desperately to produce a good, finished product they could actually release. And now, against all odds, the game is finally out. The battered and bloodied and scurvy-ridden crew has reached their destination at last. And what's the game like? What format did they eventually end up going with? Well, it's like Black Flag, except only the naval combat and none of the other stuff. I've not played it myself, but I have heard many early reports, and it's literally exactly what they advertised in 2017. and everyone told them was a bad idea. You could walk around in your little town area and talk to NPCs and stuff, but everything else is done on your ship. It is nothing more than naval combat. Activities we were once able to do ourselves are now reduced to mere cutscenes or unenjoyable minigames. As far as piratey stuff goes, no. And as far as actual gameplay goes, it's literally just less than Black Flag. And from the sound of it, it's also, wow, humongous surprise, not very fun. Some people are having fun with it, and I'm not doubting that there's some good stuff in there. It clearly leans a lot harder into the quests and progression and all that, and that's certainly stuff I would want in a game like this. But when you remove all that other stuff that made the experience feel like a real pirate simulator, when you strip away a dozen elements and leave only one or two intact, I fail to see the point. And for every cautiously optimistic take I read a dozen more from people who played the beta, found it to be a slow, grindy slog, and uninstalled without looking back. Even if there ends up being an okay game in there somewhere, and some people take a liking to it, it's so abundantly clear that this is not the game Ubisoft could have made. Also, who even knows how aggressively the game will be monetized? That's a great big question mark at the moment, but you know they're going to want to make back at least a little money on this thing. And if they end up selling XP multipliers and time savers and loot and resources and stuff for real money, I have to wonder how grindy they made the base game in order to encourage those purchases. Because including those kinds of purchases means purposefully sabotaging your game to make it less fun. This game was already so troubled, and yet I would not be surprised if they made it more grindy and less fun just to try to squeeze a few more pennies out of the people who do manage to get into it against all odds. Oh, I gotta calm down. And I also can't help but mention that it's not like other companies aren't making pirate games. Sea of Thieves is right there. That is an online pirate game that's apparently pretty great and succeeds as a pirate game and a multiplayer game. Ubisoft knew the bar was high, yet staunchly refused to aim for it. And again, that dedication is commendable. They could have produced 2 or 3 games in the time it took them to make Skull and Bones. And at any point in the process, during any of the rumored reboots and retoolings, they could have altered course. They could have just put in the work to give us all the pirate trimmings we wanted. They could have made the game anything. It could have been the biggest, most incredible pirate game in history. Or at the very least, it could have been another
It's just purely charisma.
doing during development? What were they even working on? What were they even improving? I don't know. But you gotta hand
It's
to them.
nearly time for
They
afternoon tea.
stayed that course. No matter what happened, through thick and through thin, even when the wind was against them and they were taking on water, they pressed on. They would make their mediocre live service Black Flag facility or die trying. And now that they've finally done it, the most embarrassing thing is that they've got to release the game with a straight face and act like nothing is wrong. Like this is a game people have actually been looking forward to and not making fun of for the last 7 years. Yves Renaud defended the $70 price recently, claiming that this was the world's first quadruple A game.
Oh my god. Oh.
Intensely funny and gross and sad that I can't even dwell on it. That statement is just too powerful. Oh, quadruple A. It's this game. This is the one that you call quadruple. Okay. Gotta move on. Sorry. For over 10 years, Skull and Bones has been one massive leak in a ship full of holes. The ship is still floating, but only because the crew is bailing water so hard. And
Why do I not have an endurance?
Ubisoft is now in trouble with Singapore for mistreating the employees.
I know it's a characteristic.
I'm no analyst, and I don't know what Ubisoft's projections look like. But I don't think there is much chance they're going to turn a profit on this game. And you know what? This isn't the only game of theirs that's been languishing in development hell, hemorrhaging money, constantly teasing fans who have already lost interest. Beyond Good and Evil was a very cool single-player game that eventually gained cult classic status. Beyond Good and Evil 2 was announced in 2008, then we didn't hear a single thing about it until it was re-revealed, funny enough, at E3 2017. Right along with Skull and Bones. Yeah, that was a really great show, he thought. And ever since then, same story. Long periods of nothing. Reports that Ubisoft doesn't know what they're doing. At one point, they brought up the game again with another trailer, a re-reveal, as it were, and then, poof, on again. For years now, the game has officially taken the crown for longest development of a AAA game, beating even Duke Nukem Forever. I mean that literally. Beyond Good and Evil 2 has broken the actual record, and the only information we currently have about the game, the only thing that Ubisoft has shared about it, it's going to be an always online shared world. Ubisoft is a bad company. It is run by people who have no idea what they're doing. An evil company that finds success through abuse and manipulation is already bad enough. But one that does all that evil stuff, but still manages to fail because they're also just so incredibly inept, it's just a whole other level of sad. So that's all the stuff I've been wanting to say about Ubisoft and Skull and Bones. Really, I just want another cool pirate game. And, really, I just want a new Black Flag. I played Rogue. It's pretty good. I think I like Black Flag more. But, I want something new, you know? I want the next one. I want a cool, new, single-player pirate game. But I don't know. Maybe we'll get lucky. Even if Skull and Bones ended up the way it did. Maybe after all that, someone at Ubisoft will decide to take all the lessons learned and just make a new Assassin's Creed with pirate stuff. I'd certainly take that over nothing. Actually, let's see. What's the latest Ubisoft news? Ubisoft is reportedly developing a Black Flag remake.
Into the watery landscape around her, where she lays down and succumbs to her wounds. The end. No, this one isn't a joke. This is actually the end of the game. Or at least, one of them. According to Yuri Stern, one of the creators of the game, no ending in Signalis is designed to be objectively good, bad, or the one true ending that is actually canon. Each conclusion is up to the player's own interpretations. So bear this in mind when I say what I end up seeing from the so-called Leave ending is that Signalis wants you to play it all again. It's on a second playthrough that Signalis really starts to blossom, and even if you didn't get the Leave ending as I did, I think 2 out of the 3 endings leave just enough intrigue to set you up to play the game again. Notice how in the Leave ending, the watery landscape is reminiscent of the Venetan planet. Elsa curls up into a fetal position, lying down to die, but also to be reborn from the waters of her origin when I next hit the game. Also, it reminds me I'm a scared little baby who couldn't actually confront the person I made my promise to. Playing the game again also ties into all the Elsters you've seen before, repeating cycles to achieve different results. Replays might as well be canon, meaning Signalis is essentially a time loop game, like Deathloop, Forgotten City, and another game. No, not today. Achieving the endings is complicated.
What the heck?
There are no binary choices to make in the game that lock you into certain endings. Instead, it looks at how you played the entire game and gives you the ending that most suited your playstyle. While the conditions for each ending aren't made explicitly clear in-game, some people have naturally gone to the files to find out what precisely the parameters are.
Naturally.
Doing things like killing enemies, dying, talking to people, and how long you take to beat the game will affect which direction your conclusion will take. That's right, it took 20 years, but another game has finally used Silent Hill 2's idea of endings! And unsurprisingly, it's the game clearly most in love with Silent Hill 2! This first playthrough, I played the game in a way that one could call conservative, saving supplies and ammunition by avoiding combat unless I absolutely had to. But another could call this cowardly. Like actual concept, I avoided problems rather than tackled them, and was left with an ending where I wasn't strong enough to actually confront my regrets and trauma. I fled from danger throughout the game, and at the end, Elster continued to flee. The idea of iterating on previous attempts to confront yourself in order to become stronger is one the game has already emphasized with the hatch that broke us. It's now being made into something of an exam for the player to see what ending you deserve. The ending results screen is a fun addition in most games, but now it's the reasoning for the conclusion you settled on. Something interesting was actually added in the update to the game I mentioned previously, a secret room where there was none before, leading to a service tunnel containing an ARA unit and some files, which directly hits on these ideas. Remember when I mentioned persona stabilization? Turns out this isn't a tool to keep replica units sane, but to keep them working, to keep their personalities predictable. The robots have life, and that's seen as a problem. Destabilization doesn't make them act hostile and crazy, just less likely to serve the nation. Hence this unit here, who's discovered this and is now absolutely not going back to work. Elster units are said to be loners, which doesn't sound like the Elster that Ariane knew. We have to go out and shake off our weak and introverted ways to be who we need to be. Also of note is that the ARA unit seems to be unaware of the incident happening above them, and even recognizes Elster as if they've met before. Like, they're completely unaffected by the time loop stuff? But look, we don't have time for this right now. Stuck in a Groundhog Day where I need to better myself, I took a different approach when going through for the second time. Where before I shunned fighting, this time I chose violence. Also a CRT filter from the options menu for half the playthrough, before realising it looked really distracting for the video and turning it off towards the end. The reason the second playthrough is so rewarding though is that we have the full context of the narrative on our side this time. Details begin to come together, and because we know the real reason we're here is Ariane, we can now start to untangle the question of why the world is the way it is. The answer to the question of if this is all a dream or if this is all for real is yes. Just yes. In the final hallway before fighting Volker, Adler's musings say he is determined that the sickness wasn't some pathogenic contagion at all, but describes it as a corruption of reality. Frankly, it seems an accurate summary, and Ariane seems to be the center of it all. The people weren't just getting sick, they were getting cosmically irradiated.
That's the end of things right now.
Actual space is being warped and decaying, mirroring Ariane's fate on the Penrose. Imagery of sores and pulsating flesh start to make sense when you consider it a reflection of that. Or should I say, it gets even more confusing, because how off Earth is this possible? How can one person warp reality like this, and across the vastness of space? Silent Hill was a haunted town, granted, but it seems a stretch to think of this as a haunted solar system, right? Well, it's time to talk about the key to everything in this world: bioresonance. If you played the game, you likely saw the word bioresonance in your first playthrough, on a document here or there, and your mind probably skimmed over it at first. It's brought up very matter-of-factly, like a proven law of the universe that needs no elaboration. Not uncommon for sci-fi. It's pressed on most heavily in the final chapter, though, with some documents even attributing a mystical quality to it. But when you replay Signalis, you now notice all the times it's brought up casually beforehand, and it becomes a thread for the player to follow, where you'll begin to realize just how important it is. Bioresonance is a sort of unseen phenomena that permeates through everything and everyone in Signalis' universe. It is the bedrock of almost all the amazing technological advancements that have been made in the setting. Interplanetary travel, artificial gravity, terraforming, vehicle climaforming.
Having easy burst uptime would be good.
And is also used in the imprinting process of making the replica personalities.
I'll try it, I guess, why not?
Tool. But despite how heavily it's relied upon, it's also very poorly understood in universe. It's more like a force that's being harnessed without actually being comprehended. Bioresonance is something that individuals can be attuned to as well, whether Gestalt or replica. Not everyone, and it's likely something you're born or manufactured with. The Colibri replica units, for example, the replicas who freak out and distort your vision and could be killed by tuning your radio, all use bioresonance to communicate with one another telepathically, forming a hive mind between them. They can even access the thoughts of others, and were used as surveillance on suspicious individuals. But the sickness had been making them close off, go haywire, turning their power into something hostile. When you saw all of this, and then making illusions of themselves, you were seeing just an example of the power of bioresonance when harnessed. Volca units are also bioresonant, much more so than Colibri units, explicitly able to influence the minds and will of others and manipulate objects at a distance, which sort of explains everything that was going on in that fight. Ariane Young is bioresonant, and it is how she's not only been able to project this sickness, but also moments of her life to the survivors in Sierpinski. This is what I think the prologue was showing. I don't think it's meant to be seen as literal, but instead representing Ariane's signals landing on Leng and beginning to broadcast their terrible affliction across Sierpinski. She is screaming out from the void for her love, for the person she cares for most to do one thing. Remember your promise. And it's here, in the replay, you begin to piece together who Ariane actually is, and why all of this is happening. And the answers aren't easy, as they basically come from Ariane's whole life. Ariane grew up with her mother at a radio outpost in a very isolated mountainous area of Rockfront, the same one we saw earlier. She grew up as a sickly child, and apparently the isolation made her socially closed off too, but she developed an interest in reading books. As the mountains are high and the Emperor is far away, she likely got into material that was considered forbidden by the government here too. As Ariane grew up, it was decided for her that it'd be best if she moved from the mountains and into the big city with her aunt. Ariane doesn't fit in well. She suffers bullying from her fellow students, and I don't think she got any love from her teachers either.
Just to be clear, this isn't like Favonius.
Ideas in her head, like
thinking
and loving art. According to her medical records, and as we saw of her in the library, her hair began turning white at this time, likely not helping the situation. She did get some solace by making friends with the Ito sisters, who owned a bookshop, where she likely got
keep me
more
company for a
legal. Also consider Ariane might be
plenty of time for work later.
The document that talks about people being arrested, one of the people listed was done so on suspicion of bioresonance. Also in Ito's store is that book about bioresonance that takes the more spiritual angle, and it has been labelled as banned. Being the special psychic superchild isn't seen as cool. You're seen as a potential threat, and regarded with disdain and suspicion. She's aware of her abilities. She knows it could endanger herself and her family. What joy could anyone possibly find replica. In the end, Ariane did survive her school. She even survived mandatory military service, and now she returns to a government-assigned job position at S23 Sierpinski on Leng, the furthest planet out of the solar system, to spend the rest of her days working in
I
a
created
mine.
another universe
Rock
and
front is
founded
bad for her. Leng is worse. When you examine the worker quarters in Sierpinski,
Today's
there's a
no
stack
good
of
for going
bunks,
out.
and it's remarked that the bunk is all a Gestalt worker can do. But, fortunately for Ariane, there is one escape for her.
Did I say
If
that
she can
yesterday?
find another appropriate job, she's free to join that. And so enter Penrose
Well.
program. A ship catapulted off into the great darkness of space on the hunt for habitable planets. One Gestalt pilot, one replica assistant, and a course for adventure.
Ad Astra
Between the choices of
Abyssast.
an isolated
Welcome
mining
to the
planet,
Adventurers
surrounded
Guild.
probably by the same people who hate you already, or blasting away from all of it.
Thank
And
you for
embarking on
completing
a
today's
dream, seeing
commissions.
the greater
Here is
galaxy.
your reward.
I think Ariane going with what she did is understandable. And then,
Ad
aboard the ship,
Astra.
she meets Elster, a replica unlike the protectors who've shadowed over her most of her life. It's noted in documents that Elster units are regarded as solitary individuals, and there are classified instructions on the Penrose that say to leave them alone to their duties, not to show them any photos, not to show them movies, not to let them listen to music, and not to befriend the Elster unit. Ariane ignores all of this.
She does more than just befriend.
Why not?
Framed within this relationship, you can see a lot of Ariane's life being analogous for a repressed queer lifestyle, having to hide yourself from a society that could be hostile to you, at both the personal and state level, before finally being able to express yourself when you meet someone who appreciates you for who you are. Cycle 225. Here I am finally free. I get to be myself.
Yeah, why is no one talking about the queer aspects of the story?
Unfortunately,
They're always talking about the fact that it's in space and that there's AI and stuff. What about the Yuri? Why is everyone ignoring the Yuri?
Then after 3,000
The most obvious
get the directive to come
and blatant thing you could talk about.
is a failure, and they will end up dying aboard the confines of the ship, astronomically far from anyone else. It's a wonder if this mission was ever possible, just some propaganda tool by the government. Highlighting the pair's grim fate, there's a document you can find in the flashback that warns against Gestalts from eating their replica co-pilots based on previous incidents. Though it might look and taste like human flesh, it will likely do more harm than good. It recommends leaving the replica, who is much more likely to survive than the human, to let at least something come from this doomed expedition. Penrose Triangle, an impossible shape, representing an impossible mission. Elster talks about how they did their best with what happened, but they eventually began running out of supplies, out of parts. Their health suffered physically and
Holy shit, I probably should have just double tapped.
of her promise.
There.
Ariane, placed in the cryogenic tank while suffering from radiation sickness, went on living, let down by the person she loved, via resonance broadcast across the stars.
Off we go!
Let's look at the second day of my guard. This time, Elsa manages to step through the door into the cryo chamber where Ariane is.
Alright, double tap.
Watch out! Coming at ya! Hiya!
Amazing. Holy shit. That is hilariously effective. By the way, I'm not spoiling anything. I've already played through. I just haven't uploaded the videos yet. So I've decided, you know, it's time for me to see what everyone else thinks of the game. What the heck's going on with the internet? Bruh.
I'm glad I got this ending second, as I see it as a bridge between fleeing and the next ending. Though we can enter the room, Elster is not yet the person they need to be to fulfill their promise. So, she takes solace in her company, but doesn't manage to complete things. There's still more to be done. But at least my efforts won't have been in vain. We should tie up some loose threads still lying around, starting with the King in Yellow. Frankly, there could be an entire second video solely talking about Signalis' allusions to the book and how the two tie together. I don't have the sanity left for that, but here we go. The King in Yellow is the name of a play within the book's story, and people who read said play begin to go insane. The first story in the book, The Repair of Reputations, follows a man who's read The King in Yellow. His perception of reality is questionable from page 1. Talking about the United States being invaded in the 20s by the Germans, Norfolk, Virginia being occupied, and government-mandated lethal chambers in every city. I won't go over the whole story, but you're meant to question what the narrator tells you from the very beginning. And Signalis...
I've decided I'm skipping Arlecchino.
...is correct as well. And frankly, Elster's is not. And in part from the King in Yellow from the game. You could see it as representing a truth that needs to be unlocked. You could
Why?
just about see
It's not that I think she's weak or that I don't think she looks hot. Oh my god, voice crack, what am I?
The beach dreams in the game. Both times just out of your reach before finally being
But here's the simple fact.
ready and waiting for you. Or maybe you're ready to
She's a pyro character, and she's a main DPS. And if you didn't notice, I kinda have... Or, no, not Changling. I kind of have way too many of those. Hi, Dehya.
Marianne actually has connections to the book herself. A note recalls how she saw her mother had a copy of
mind
the
where we
book. She
go,
worked the
as
radio
long as I have my friends with me.
Presumably, it was a code book. A means to discern the truth from the invisible messages coming through space. Where does this sound from? She once saw a copy. Bookstore, but it was removed the next day, confiscated by the Protectors. That book was of her mother, taken away by the ruling party, just like how she was taken away from her mother
My
by
time
them.
with the Spina taught me
Adler
that
is
parrying
also
and
worth a quick mention, as I do like how he's not really an evil villain in the story. He is a desperate man, placed into an impossible position. Yes, he works against you, but frankly, after all that's happened, how can he not blame
I
you?
should take off my hat and
Continuing
let the
cycle
snowflakes
over
fall
and
onto my
over again.
face. I feel like that would be really refreshing.
How many times has Adler been here? Well, guess what? There was a second secret room added in that same patch. If you go back down the hallway and one final boss, the door that led to the
Coming at ya! Everybody stand
inside
back!
are 3 different diaries that Adler ended up keeping in different loops. The not-so-secret one we saw earlier. One way I think it's done to very well. Adler was just starting to feel the effects of the loop, the sickness of cold, and one facility was fine, mostly. It seemed an Elster unit appeared for excavation work in the mines. It's specified in Luke 7 sickness of cold, that Elster unit was never brought on, hence why no one knows us. Mostly, but considering the red desert underneath the mines was essentially dug up, the previous Elster
Adventure time.
tried their hand to find Ariana, facilitate their reunion. You might also be wondering how exactly the lovers are reunited. Games of a distant pathway, maybe drifting across space, someone here who's catching and amplifying across the facility. Someone already powerful enough to distort space. Commander Folker, deified bioresonant replica supreme, is not just the recipient of Ariane's dream, but also a dreamer herself. During the first of each dream, the player can find excerpts from The King in Yellow, or if you go the other way, sections from An Inhabitant of Carcosa by Ambrose Bierce, which Robert W. Chambers borrowed from for The King in Yellow. One page
I
here,
really wanna go
however,
traveling.
isn't like the others. We will become one, but I can never go back to being me. Remember what happened after the final boss? Folker and Elster merge themselves, which leads to us returning to the crashed Penrose. This note is from her, despite being in Elster's dream. There were notes in the corridor before we fought, too. Two of those being from Folker, the first talking about the boundaries between her mind and Elster's breaking down, specifically calling out the memories she sees as coming from a stranger. Presumably, this is Ariane putting the idea of Elster onto Folker. The second note has her seemingly lost in the happy memories of Ariane and Elster together, clearly coming around to the idea of a new persona in her head. Folker is part of the dream, and influencing it too, and merging with her is the only way to go far enough to see Ariane once again. The actual merging is to open the door for Elster, but also to make Elster...
That carrying an unreliable weapon is worse than not carrying one at
Folker is
all.
the one collecting Ariane's bioresonant memories and broadcasting them, while Elster's been messily picking up bits and pieces and sending through them, becoming one, that Elster can become the specific unit who made the promise. It's somewhat horrifying. Just as Folker felt Ariane's memories take over her mind, another Elster takes over Elster. Though, for Folker, this is what Elster wants to do, at least. Third ending, Promise. Elster and Ariane recognize one another. Truly fast.
What? God, what's with that high-pitched ringing?
Strike a pose!
Can't see?
Come a little closer.
Let the world come alive!
Barbados, got this.
One with the force.
You're in for a little shock. Come a little closer.
It's a difficult ending.
Why is there a chest here?
Dislike? The kill your gaze ending is so overdone, to the point it feels like media is trying to say that no audience can recognize a gay relationship as true love, so one of them has suffered the loss of the other. It can feel manipulative, emphasized by its ubiquity. For some reason, though, possibly because Signalis leans so heavily on its elements of tragedy throughout the entire game, I don't hate it. I like this ending, in fact. Signalis asks specifically if we could end the life of our partner. They were truly suffering. What would it take for us to be able to do this? How many times would you have to move through hell to reach the point where you're chances to finally make the right decision? Both. Does Elsa's suffering help her understand Ariana's suffering? Putting aside her selfishness and loneliness to perform the hardest act possible. Elsa
Smells like something good is
sends a
inside.
cycle by a lover's hand. That really what she would want. Beyond that, killing Ariane, Elsa has to...
Actually, what am I doing? I should go take a shower.
Elsa and Ariane made a promise. They both